Hi, in this video I'm going to cover how to do some date transformation using Power Query. Now you may be familiar with some of the functions in Excel where we can pull out some date information. Let's say for example we have a column of dates here, we wanted to pull out the year. There is a function called year that will pull out that particular information, say 2010, and there's also functions that pull out days, day of the month, weeks, and whatnot. But there's also that capability that we have in Power Query, and where this becomes helpful is if this is something where we do on a recurring basis, or we wanted to give this to somebody and just have them do it as a one-stop thing where they can just press one button to refresh everything if they have tables that are referencing other links, and it just makes it a little bit easier. Now, of course, in Excel, there's many different ways to do the similar thing, and Power Query is just another way where we can transform data using the capabilities inside of it. Excel 2016 has Power Query already in it, but if you have Excel 2010 or 2013, you're going to have to download it from Microsoft and enable it. So since this is Excel 2016, let's see how we can do it. Now, I clicked anywhere in the table. All I need to do is go under Data and go click get into the Get and Transform group, click from table. It's going to turn this particular range of data into a table, and it's going to create a table and then pull it into Power Query. My table does have headers. I have that checked because the first row is a header row. Click OK, and it's going to bring up the Power Query editor. Now, I've got some extra columns here, which I'll kind of leave in there for now, but the column that I want to work with is the date column. You can see here when I click on date, there's a couple ribbon options available, and the ones that we can use to do this is transform and add. I'm going to work with the add column tab because what we're going to do is we're going to add some columns and get some date information out of that first column here. Now this transform column, what it does is it's going to transform that particular column, and what the options that are available in add column with reference to this particular video where we wanted to take some things out from the date column will also apply with the transform tab. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a separate column and kind of transform the data here. So if we select on that date column, you can see here that we have a couple options. We can get the year, as I showed earlier. We can also pull the year out from that column here. You see this is 2010. It pulls the year 2010 out of there. There's other options what we can do. We can pull out the month. You can see that first one is the month of March. It's going to pull out the number 3 here because we just have that particular numerical designation, but you can also pull out the name of that month. So at the very bottom, you can see the name of month where you can pull out March, right? And we also have the option of pulling out quarters. This is going to be the first quarter of the year. So these are going to be the quarters based on the calendar year, January to December. And we also have date where we can pull out the week of the year. This is getting a little bit crowded here, so I'm going to remove these. Select on the first one here, right click, and we'll delete till end. So we'll delete those 4 steps there, right? So it's going to delete all those 4 steps. It's going to ask me if that's okay. I'll click delete, and let's start again. And we can go back to the week here. We can have the week of the year. This is going to be the 11th week of the first one here. And we have other options where we can select week of the month. Right, so it's going to figure out how many weeks are in that month and which week of the month is it. Now we also have days. So we have either the day in terms of the numerical setting. We picked out the 7th there, the 19th there, and we can also pick out the days, the name of the days, right? So we have the name of the days. We have this, the 7th occurs on a Sunday, and that 19th occurs on a Monday, right? So there's a lot of things that we can do here and pick it out and use it to plot graphs or make it a little bit easier for people to read. Let's change this here. Now there's another thing I wanted to show. Let's delete until end for this select group. Click delete. Is that we have this option here where we can do aging, right? So if I select aging, you'll notice that it puts that aging down for the days, hours, minutes, seconds. Wow, that's a lot of detail there. And maybe we don't need this detail. And what I can do is I can change that here. You can select days, and we have aging down to the days here, right? So this is like the last one here is a little easier to read. Today is the June 30th, and I selected this date is June 29th, and so we have our days here. So we selected that. So we can also do aging and do hours, minutes, seconds, total years, total days. So and multiply and divide. There's a lot of things you can do after you pull out that date information and make a new column and do a lot of interesting things with this. Now, another thing that I want to show is with this date, you also have date only, right? You can also just pull out the date. If you didn't want to have that time information, you can just pull out that date and do some information with a new, do some manipulation with a new column. Now, as I mentioned before, there's this transform tab, and what it does is you're basically transforming that particular column. So if we do transform and we go under our date and time column, we can do basically the same thing here, right? We have our time, we have our date, and what it's going to do is not going to add a new column, it's going to transform that particular column. So if I just want a year from there, it's going to take all that information there and just turn that column into a year column. So there's a lot of things you can do with date and time. If you wanted to transform that one column, you use the transform tab and go under the date and time column groupings. If you wanted to keep that column and add some extra columns to do some, I'll delete that particular step. If you wanted to add another column and do some date and time transformation, you can use this particular from date and time grouping to affect those changes. So as I mentioned before, there's always many different ways to do things in Excel. Power Query just gives you another option to do it. And it's kind of nicer in this way because if you do something on a reoccurring basis, or you kind of want to hide formulas and functions from somebody, or you have stakeholders, you just tell them to press one button to do something, it's an option for you to use. So I hope that helps. Thanks for watching.